Hello everyone and welcome. Yes, my name is Arrowfire and welcome back to another episode of Look Out and Shout. And a long awaited one because today we're back on the TransArt train because today we are finally reviewing, TransArt BWM-10 Dino Claw Assassin, their version of a Transmetal or Transmetal 2 Dinobot. I would say Transmetal just because it's his first time as a Transmetal. So, I was never sold on this particular character. I'm a big fan of the Dinobot character. I never felt he needed the Transmetal upgrade. The episode for Code of Hero giving the very sad but noble death of Dinobot was a nice final run, and he didn't need to be brought back in such a guise. And I was never too crazy on the Transmetal design. Whilst it was cool to have the character back, it never felt like the original character for me. So when TransArt said they were going to be doing this figure, I thought, well, he never was my favourite anyway, but I've been getting all of the other ones. So yeah, I got this. The box itself is nice, very large, very big. You've got the artwork at the front for him in robot mode. You've got some stencil outlines on either side of the box, as well as him in Dino mode on the back and saying Dino Claw on top as well. And some gubbins on the bottom. This was delayed for a very long time to TransArt. We can only understand that it's delayed due to engineering reasons, as you see in the number BWM-10. We got other numbers since, so there was clearly some issues holding this back. This was teased a long way back, and they've gone on with other releases since. So this mold, this design, did give TransArt some problems, and you'll see more of that as the figure goes on. But of course, you too can get hold of this from ShowZStore.com, which I got this from myself using ShowZ points, which if you would like to continue supporting this channel, next time you use ShowZStore.com, please do enter under support your favourite reviewer code at the top of the homepage, the code FIRE1, FYRE1, and that enables points from your purchases to also be shared onto my account, which I can put towards purchases such as these for reviews on the channel. Thank you very much for the ongoing support from everyone. We have just hit 75,000 points generated for people using my code, which is a crazy number. Thank you so much. It really has helped the channel grow. I do think if the code didn't exist and people didn't use it, content will be going out considerably less because of it. So thank you so much for your ongoing support, and I cannot thank you enough for all that it means to me. Now, I've taken out the figure, of course, but inside he comes in his plastic shell, which is the figure himself in robot mode, comes with accessories, which we'll go into in a minute, and also comes with the dinosaur tail, or a robot tail as well, in two separate parts. Of course, with it comes his tech spec, with some numbers on the back of it. He comes with some stickers that you can use for the spark. He comes with blue for a more typical spark, or a red spark that you can apply to his chest. I'll show you that in a second as well. Now, for those of us who are familiar with TransArt, they do not do instructions, and you get a QR code to scan to take you to instructions. But if you're like me and you got this figure early, you scan one of these QR codes, it takes you to their YouTube page where they show transformation videos done by either themselves or a high-profile YouTube channel. Unfortunately, I've got this figure fairly early. The video's not up yet, so I'm going to have to try and work out how to transform this figure myself. But if and when a video goes up, that's where you go to get it. And again, keeping with TransArt themed accessories, arguably their most important accessory. The gloves are back. Mickey Mouse gloves. We haven't had these for a while. This is my third pair of TransArt gloves. For those who don't know, this is to handle the chrome elements to which this figure will have in abundance of, so as not to get fingerprints and smudge marks. They are a little tight, and I haven't got the biggest hands in the world, so this is one size fits all. Good luck. They're thinking to protect the figure. It's nice, but it's become a bit of a running joke that you're going to have to handle your figures with care, like it's some kind of fine china or fine glassing. Yeah, I think it's funny, and I feel like Mickey Mouse because of it. Okay, let's have a look at the figure itself, shall we? And here he is in his robot mode, and I do not think I can get him into a better pose. I think he will fall for one big problem straight out of the box. No ankle tilt. Big deduction. For a figure that is very large, for a figure that has a lot going on, has real presence, something to marvel at. That tail, I can't tell you, that really makes a figure very big. It's such a presence and a sculpting of a figure, and it almost can't stand up. It can stand up, but you either use the tail to balance it as a third leg, pardon the term, or you stand it more or less like this, just straight leg together. If you do a legs out to the side stance, he's resting on the inside of his feet. And for a figure that's fairly top heavy, there's a lot of the weight is round here. That's a big oversight for me. I've noticed a couple of other things just fresh out the box. It's not great. It's not thought through well enough for a figure that's been delayed, for a figure that's had a lot of time and a lot of anticipation, and clearly a lot of remolding and restructuring. This is listed as BWM-10, and we've gone past that in their numbering system for the other releases. So this is something they allocated and have been working on, and already there's a flaw. It's got great presence to it. The chrome, of course, is lovely. Even the white is very nice. I will say straight away, I've never been a fan of this particular character, in as much as I was never a fan of Dinobot 2. I was a big fan of Dinobot 1, and I never felt he needed a Transmetal upgrade, particularly how his story goes in Code of Hero. So I didn't need this, but I've been on a bit of a trans hunt, train with it, and I thought, okay, I'll get it. And it does look nice. There's a lot of things about it I do like. The claws, the hands of what are going to be the Velociraptor claws are very, very good. The tail has a lot of presence to it. It's got a nice, I want to say pearlescent white. Yeah, I would say pearlescent white. It's very reflective with the gold accents on the tail. Very Power Rangers white tiger sword, which is quite surprising, but I do like it. The face sculpt is very good, a lot of character there, even if it is only the one faceplate that it comes with. But a couple of big design flaws hold this figure back, and you'll see what I mean. Let's get in for a closer look. Now, do you see what I mean? I've got him in a slightly wider stance, but I've had to position his tail to be a third leg almost, because if I sort of put him on his toes forward, he wants to rock back until the tail acts as a rest. And it's a shame because there's a lot to like about this figure. There's a lot of design to like, but it still wants to go. Now he's not really resting on the front of his feet at all. But if I zoom in a bit, you can see that beautiful look on the head sculpt. The chest piece is very nice. Limited chrome features, but then again, that's what the character had as well. I do like this kind of grey used on the torso. I think that's a very attractive colour. Gives more machine gubbins to it. What would otherwise be a very bland figure. The hands, the claws are a bit stiff, but this isn't to go into articulation. There's nice ratchets, but that's it. 90-degree bend on the elbow. And for this type of figure, and okay, maybe it's not so expensive as some other Masterpiece figures, but TransArt haven't been too expensive. I want a double bend there. Considering this is going to be the leg of Velociraptor mode, could it have been so hard to engineer a double bend? Asking for more articulation for robot mode and beast mode as well. The talons are very stiff but do move. I did wonder if that was a QC issue because we had 3 claws pointing one way and then one going the other way. But looking at the images of the promotional shots, it is meant to be that way. They are a bit stiff. The last 2 figures move. The claws move independently, but they're just so stiff. They do move together, the last 2 ones. Bicep rotation, I might as well show you articulation now. Head moving up and down is pretty good. It is stiff for left and right. Very stiff. Almost too stiff. I did think at first that it doesn't even move at all. Does have a nice jaw movement. If I get kind of a full range of motion, there's some nice teeth. I don't know if you'll see in there. But he has that kind of very similar expression to the original Dinobot. The Takara Masterpiece showed that as well. These shoulder pads are on a ball joint, so they will move out of the way. They won't knock too much. Whilst there's a nice ratchet out, there's a ratchet out on the side as well. And again, the shoulder pads move, which is welcome. Doesn't restrict movement. Now, there is kind of waist movement here, but I think it catches the tail. So it's more of a pelvis movement. You see it kind of untabs the tail front and back, and that's part of the transformation. That's not, I mean, there's something there, but not much and not meaningful. figure getting in its own way has been a phrase that's been bandied around before. Not necessarily with TransArt, but not brilliant. Nice ratchets out for a 90-degree bend on the leg or on the hip. Softer ratchets out on the side, but ratchets nevertheless. A stiff 90-degree there, and you've got, I think, a pneumatic leg again for Dino mode, I guess. I don't really know how many legs he's going to stand on here. I do like these tubes on the back of his legs. They're there for decoration. They certainly don't give any more ankle stability. But he does come with one other gimmick. His centerpiece does open and you can see his spark. Now that comes with the stickers that you can put on. You can either put on a red spark. I went with the more traditional blue spark from the cartoon. It's a nice little gimmick. It's a bit hard getting it open and closed though. I had to use the part separator. There is a little lip at the very top that you can kind of pry backwards, but even then it's very flush. And careful when you put it back in, because that's when it will smudge, and that's what the gloves are for. But that's a little feature for the history, the backstory of the character. Articulation on the tail is quite good actually. You get a lot of movable points, and this end piece that comes separated out the box is on a ball joint, so you can get kind of a very bendy range of motion there. But I would say if you're going to have it and you want to keep it all a bit neat and tidy, you probably want to go a full bend around, and even then have it going towards the ground to act as that back support. It's that's not good. Okay, quick summary of things I don't like about it fresh out of the box. I don't like the lack of ankle tilt, and believe me, I looked. These are fixed pieces, these are stiff pieces. I don't like the fact it's only a single bend at the elbow, and I'm not wild about the minimal waist rotation. I've criticised other companies for this. I've criticised Fans Toys for this. TransArt have done a few releases now. They've got to get these things right, particularly for a figure of this size. If this was on Quick Strike, I could forgive them that, because I don't expect Quick Strike to have all these bells and whistles. I don't think he's that big and had that much mobility. But this Dinobot, believe me, he's huge, and you'll see that in comparisons. So there's a couple of early misses there. Accessory-wise, he is a little bit limited, but he does come with two things. First off, he comes with this egg. Now this transforms into his turret, I believe. I can't really recall this. It's a thing. I'm actually not sure how you get it open. It looks like it just pries apart. And there you go, that's it. I don't think that was necessary. It doesn't stand up very well. It's murder to get it open, and when it's all closed up, it's just an egg-looking thing. The blast effect can go in his eye, which I'll show you in a second, and I think that's a better use of it. But that's a bit of a pointless gimmick. I can't see me using it, and okay, you could argue he doesn't necessarily need to come with gimmicks, or what other gimmicks he could come with. I would have liked additional faceplates, if anything. But yeah, that feels a bit... feels a wasted accessory. Right, now don't move. I don't know if you could see this, but he has got his blast effect in his eye, and it is on a spring. His red eye that he shoots his eye laser out of is spring loaded. God, this is going to fly off. And it's murder getting it in. There's clearly got to be a way to make it clasp in place, because the slightest movement causes it to fire out. Watch. And if you're not careful, it will take your eye out. That red eye, you won't see it now at this distance. That red eye is on a spring loaded. You can actually push it in quite a way, but if you try and put the base of this in, it will just ping straight back out at you. And that will go in your eye, so do take care. It's a shame, because it's a nice little use of the gimmick, but if that's what it's like getting it in, I'm not going to lose my eye for the sake of a bit of plastic. Okay, now on to some comparisons. Here he is alongside TransArt's Skateboard Gorilla, their version of a Transmetal Optimus Primal. That is quite a bit bigger, but then again, Dinobot always was bigger than Primal. Primal was never that big, but when you look at these two figures as the figures themselves side by side, you really do get a sense of scale and how big this Dinobot actually is. But he does dwarf him by quite some margin. Here he is alongside their Transmetal 2 Cheetor. This is TransArt's Metal Panther or Metal Leopard. I think it's Metal Panther. And this is the two TransArt figures. That is a very tall figure, and that is much bigger than Primal, but just looks so small and thin compared to this guy. Both had the same issues actually, not great at standing up and both relying on their tail to prop them up. This isn't my favourite TransArt release, but that's how the two of them look together. And alongside his creator, here he is alongside TransArt's Metal T-Rex, their version of a Transmetal Megatron. Love how these two look. I don't recall this Dinobot being the same height as Megatron, but when this Megatron became Transmetal 2 Megatron, the big dragon, he was considerably taller than Dinobot, and that's when they spent, at least I think, most of their screen time together. But the figures themselves are really good. His shoulder pad won't really stay up, but that's by the by. They do look really good. I am amazed when you get these two together just how big that Dinobot is. This was the first comparison that I put alongside, and he really is toe-to-toe with Megatron, but of course his loyal servant. And a comparison that most people want to see, here he is alongside his own self. This is Dinobot 1, Takara's masterpiece, Beast Wars Dinobot. It was a substantial upgrade in terms of the cartoon, so I don't begrudge on that in terms of size and scaling. I was just never a fan of this jump. This was such an iconic character. This is such a good version of that character. It did not need to make that jump, I don't think. But I can see that final scene having the two of them together where this Dinobot remembers the memories from this one and how it's a flashback to the Code of Hero episode and how Dinobot's personality wins throughout. It's quite interesting how these two do share some aspects of engineering. They both have the movable jaw bearing the teeth, similar facial expressions and movement of the claw hands, but I can't say that they share the same engineering for ankle articulation. Takara's got them beat on that one. And here he is alongside a typical Masterpiece Carbot in Target Master Hot Rodimus. I mean, the word masterpiece just doesn't seem to cover it. Okay, let's get this guy transformed up, shall we? And here he is in his beast mode, and I'm not putting that on a turntable. That tail on really makes this figure long, and would you believe there is standing issues? Not as bad as robot mode. These are the arms, so the wrists of the arms rather than the feet of robot mode that make the claws. With the tilting of the hips, you can just get better stances, and the claws do act as a nice little balancing. It still has a tendency to want to go forward. You just need to position the legs right. But again, the tail acts as a nice counterweight. It's very sizable. It's very nice. Possibly the better of the two modes. I'd say that. Surprisingly large. But it, again, does have a tendency to lean a little bit. But I do like it. Now, I will say, I bet you wish I did transformations on my videos. I did not have instructions for this. I did not have videos for it. I went pure hard panther on it. No instructions, just an image that I took off ShowZ's website, the stock images, and I got it from A to B, which I'm quite pleased to say I think I've done, but I'm sure I've missed off something along the way. It's an okay transformation. There's a bit of flopping back and forward, the tail in particular, and the back is on a sort of thin panel that you have to then rotate 180 degrees, and then you have to flip his undercarriage, as it were, and there's a lot of things that kind of get in each other's way as you do it. But you can do it. There is actually only so many parts. Like I've said before, going into a beast form, what would be typically 2 legs into 4 legs, although this is 2 legs into 2 legs, you generally can work out where things go. Once you work out that these are the arms of robot modes into the feet of Dino mode and where his head comes from, you can kind of piece together the rest. The hardest part was the arms, which I will say, they're quite well done. See, there he goes. He's gone. he's gone a complete nosedive. I might just have to hold him for the sake of the video. The arms are on this kind of outward hinge. Let me tilt it. You see there. And that's quite good because that's on the leg of robot mode, which goes out to get kind of a wide shoulder of Dino mode, which is good. Probably wouldn't have worked otherwise. It would have been too close together. But he will hold, and he does look good. But I think it's going to limit what poses you can get him in. Everything holds up, but there's a lot here. The chest of Dino mode was quite heavy, quite padded out. And that weight, I think, exists mostly here. These pieces a very nice sculpted die-cast. It's got like a marbled effect almost. There's grooves in that, just like it looks. Very, very nice. Very, very pretty. It can look... I'm not wild on this form of Dinobot, in as much as it looks very skeletal. It doesn't look like a dinosaur, per se. It's very bare bones. His head's very skull-shaped. The neck's very thin. The arms look more robotic than dinosaur-like, and the tail is very just joint-heavy. Don't get me wrong, that's much more against the design of the character rather than, say, this iteration of it, this incarnation of it. I think it does what it needs to do to make the Dinobot 2 character. Well, we're kind of in for a closer look already, so let's get in for some articulation. Head rotation, a little bit stiff, but it's there. Nice jaw, open and close. Can look down a bit, can look up. These are stiff from robot mode. You do get claw movement. There's the sidewards, which is quite good. Again, as I was saying, that hinge piece. Couple of squeaky joints, nothing too bad. But you'll know this kind of mobility from the robot mode. I don't really want to get it into poses, but again, it's that same level of articulation. You get that kind of shoulder movement for the pneumatic leg, which is quite good. And again, the claws do act as a nice little bit of stability. But this is where the tail really comes into its own. That multi-purpose joint. Again, a little bit squeaky, but it is pretty good for maneuverability. You don't feel like it's going to break, but it's such a lot of distance to cover. And I feel like you're going to need that tail to balance it. He wants to topple again. I'm going to have to edit the hell out of this video. I mean, he is good in this mode, but he is still a handful. I get the impression this isn't a figure that you mess with too much due to his size and scale and balancing. It's going to be a nice piece, but how you're going to display it is going to be one of the bigger challenges. Okay, on to some comparisons. I will say I haven't got Dinobot transformed up into his dinosaur mode. That is the Takara of Dinobot. I'm going to have to put some images of that on Instagram in due course. Here he is alongside TransArt's Metal Leopard, their version of a Transmetal Cheetor. Completely dwarfed, really, and this is not massively a small figure. He's still pretty good, and one of my last reviews, funny enough. You can just see a complete dwarf of the character. This Dinobot really was a big figure in a cartoon. I don't know if he was exactly this big, but another figure from TransArt. You can see the upscaling going on here. Alongside his nemesis, here he is alongside TransArt's Rat Trap, their metal mouse. Nice little figure, nice little comparison between the two. You can see the advancements into the Transmetal stage that was going on at this point. I like the colour scheme that these two kind of complement each other, as well they should for their conflicting personalities. TransArt's Motor Spider, their version of a Tarantulas. Love that figure. That's a nice little comparison between the two. I think Tarantulas was still a Predacon at this point. Maybe he went off to do his own thing. I do get the timeline confused because we do start to go into late Season 3 and Transmetal 2s, and Tarantulas didn't actually get the best ending, so I'm not sure how much screen time these two shared. TransArt's Vice Poison, their version of Quick Strike. Again, completely different category, but the last two figures that I think TransArt have released, not including the metallic repaint of Cheetor, but these were the last two new mould releases. I do wonder, has the bubble slightly burst for TransArt? These aren't these best figures from TransArt. Better releases are behind them, I think. So I wonder, has the bubble burst? Have they reached their limit for what they can do with the tools available? These aren't the best figures out there. They're fine, but that's possibly it. And a typical Masterpiece Carbot represented by Takara Masterpiece Red Alert. Interesting that I've just picked one with the same colour palette. No contest here, complete different range, but that's Masterpiece, and so's that. Make of that what you will. And whilst his accessory turns up into an egg, and possibly he could hold it, in his mouth even, I don't think there's any way you can really put this, or the same to be said of his other accessories, so I don't know where they would go. He could maybe hold them in his jaw, but I don't think they're really meant for this mode. So what is my view on Shino Dino? Okay, let's cover the dinosaur in the room, shall we? Let's talk about this KO that's going around as well. And I'll put this image on screen that I found on Facebook. There is a KO under the title of Black Mamba, I believe, a name from the past that we are familiar with. It came out very soon to the release of this figure. And it's not quite the same, but it might as well be. It's a fourth party, it's a knockoff, whatever you want to call it. Now let's look at what we know of it. The figure has got a couple of differences, but it's come out very, very close, under a different name, but very close to the TransArt release of this figure. And it's even up and listed on the website with photographs of it using the same backdrops as the actual TransArt figures. Now, allow me to be indulged with my tin hat conspiracy theory. I've felt for a while, if a KO comes out under a different name but looking very, very similar and coming out very close to the time of the official release or whatever the main release is, I always feel that that's going to be in cahoots. I feel that, look, if someone's going to take these designs and say, I see your TransArt, you're working on this Dinobot, I'm going to make my own one. If they take the designs, are they going to go to somewhere else, get a factory rented, get the equipment ready, people ready, and get it all produced in time to get it out? And it was only a week before this came out. For the stars to align for all that to happen, I don't buy it. So this leads me to think they are early batch failures. If you're TransArt, anyone making multiple copies of a figure, there's going to be defects, there's going to be breakage, as they call it, some that are just not quite good enough to go out, but still 80% good enough. There is some differences, I'll grant you. I think noticing the head is quite different, the top of the dinosaur mode is quite different, and there is considerably less detailing on this DB01 version. But other than that, it's much the same. And again, the timing is very suspect. So I do wonder, is this just TransArt's way of saying it's not good enough to go out? It's be a QC nightmare. We don't need to replace the parts anyway for anything that we do send out that's looking like this. So why don't you release it under a different banner and at least get some kind of money for it? I think that's what happens. I don't necessarily think I'm wrong. Maybe not in this case, but I think that does happen in other cases where we do see fourth parties, KOs, or other interpretations coming out very soon to official or whatever the main release is. Okay, that's that issue part. What about this figure itself? The dinosaur mode is quite impressive, and I do think for what you're getting in terms of size of bot, I mean, look, that's almost my full camera screen width. It's very good for a figure that costs under £100, which I'm very pleased with. It's got nice TransArt features to it. The paint is very nice. The chrome is very nice. The heft is quite good. It's quite a big size. I do think this is the better of the two modes. The more I have it in this mode, the more I like it. I think it screams of a figure that had problems. And as I said when I looked at the robot mode, there's a few things that are just not forgivable. Unforgivable, that's the word. It's basic errors. And I said this as well. I wonder if TransArt's bubbles burst a little bit. It's not to say they can't have issues, but they had issues with Megatron and they had to rework it, re-release it. They've gone back and done some repaints. You could argue they should have done that at time of release. That's neither here nor there. The quick strike did not go down well, and this, it's got some big fundamental issues. The lack of ankle tilt for a figure of this size, and it's not hard to do an ankle tilt, is quite an omission. How hard would it have been to put something in that it could even be on a ratchet? It doesn't have to be on a ball joint. But their tarantulas before had very heavy chrome feet, which become the claws of tarantulas mode. They can be posed on a ball joint to get stances and pose and bear the weight. Their Megatron can as well. So it's not an alien concept, yet they chose not to go with it. And would it have been so bad? Waist rotation is more of a torso rotation. I think there's things about it that are just a bit obvious for me. There's things that I think you should be doing better on the basics. A lack of a double elbow, yeah, I think for a figure of this size, under the Masterpiece banner, for a figure that's been delayed once already, yeah, that should be better. I like the tail. The accessories, this weird egg, not necessary. I would have preferred a different face sculpt. I like the one it comes with, but that's it. That's your one flavour of it. The lack of posing worries me. It will pose better in this mode of the two, I think, but I think that is actually going to be harder to pose. At least in bot mode, it has more chance of standing up and you can curl the tail away, but you're relying on the tail to act as a third leg for him to be a tripod, just to hold a pose, just to stand up. And I haven't decided how I'm going to store him in this collection. I want to keep him in this mode, and I may do, but that's going to be a space killer to do so. But that's because he will not stand in robot mode. I just think, is this TransArt running out of ideas, perhaps? And I don't take joy in saying that. I've been very full of praise of their products, but I've got to be critical where I see it as well. I've heard a lot of people say if you've got the knockoff version, it's not great. This is fine from a quality control perspective. Nothing feels brittle, nothing's going to break. The lack of getting instructions up on time. Whilst I won't deduct that from this figure, I do think TransArt, you need to get better at that. I think if you're going to release a figure, as soon as the first one leaves the factory, make sure your transformation videos that you're doing through these QC cards, or QR cards rather, make sure those videos are up as soon as one leaves the factory. Because you're going to have early figures out. You're going to have prototypes out in the wild to be reviewed, to be transformed for photograph experience, for photography to go up on websites like ShowZ. So make sure a video's up, because I had to go through this Hard Panther and I think I've done it right, but I just used the photos on the website to do so. I do like the things like the marbled effect of the die cast on the top. The chrome is very, very nice. I think the white is a very attractive white. It's got, looking at it now with a light on it, it's got a lovely pearlescent. You can see like a hint of blue in there, almost a yellow tinge as well. Not yellowing, that's something else. We'll get there in due course, I'm sure. It is very, very nice. It is a very good price, but I think it's got some obvious blunders. Based on this, I give this, I'm conflicted, somewhere between 2.5 and 3 Rodimus Star Badges, maybe 2 3/4. It's nice. It is nice. There's things about it I do like. I like the gold accents on the tail. I like the spine. But I want to store it in bot mode, and I just don't feel I can. I've got to have him standing so rigid and tall just to stay upright. I've got to position the tail. If the tail comes off and you don't want the tail on, then that will hinder how he poses. And I think I'm going to have him resting against the side. Again, things about it I like, but some big fundamental errors that I think should have been addressed, particularly for a figure that has been held back. Again, BWM-10, we've gone past it for releases. There's things that could have been done and things that should have been done better. I can forgive them for not having a transformation video up yet. I don't know if I've got this fully right. I think I have. And it's a fine transformation. It's not painful. It's a lovely paint job, but a few basic modelling errors could have and would have given this a much higher score. And there we go, that is my review of TransArt's BWM-10 Dino Claw Assassin, their version of a Transmetal Dinobot 2. I'll put some photos up at the end. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and hit that subscribe button, because I will see you on the next one.